Hello internet friends, high time I did an update on my collecting for my YouTube channel. I'm focused on 80s mainly, but there's some 90s as well, as you can see with the Turtles. Reissues of toy lines that I remember from being a kid. I got into it a few years ago when Hasbro started re-releasing the Transformers in very G1 accurate packaging, and it really took me back to exploring the toy shops back in the day. Since then I've really expanded though, got into the modern Transformers, which recreate those G1 designs but with modern articulation and stylings, but staying very accurate. Unless you were into the masterpiece over the last couple of decades, what Hasbro is releasing for Transformers is very accurate to G1. And it looks really cool, so I've got some of those displayed. But also Motu Origins, that's been fantastic. Mattel bringing out very accurate stuff from the 80s, which I've been picking up. We've got all those guys up there. So yeah, basically in this video I'll take you through what I've got so far, show you where I'm up to. I'm a little bit restricted by space. I basically have my study walls, so everything is on shelves or like this, pegged up the stuff that I'm keeping on cards, so it looks a little bit like a toy shop. That's a kind of a I do want that effect, but it's a little bit of a compromise to do with space, which is an issue that I think a lot of people can empathize with, and maybe you have that issue yourself. But this, you can see how I'm tackling it, maybe get some ideas in that case, and it's just fun looking at other people's collections. I like doing that on YouTube, so it's another one of those videos that hopefully you'll enjoy looking at mine. We're starting up over there with some Dungeons and Dragons from Hasbro and some vehicles as well. So what have we got here? Some Dungeons and Dragons. These are Hasbro releases, and I haven't taken them out of the box. I want a representation of that cartoon from the 80s, and these figures do it really well. However, there have been well documented issues with these figures breaking, so I'm kind of not feeling too bad about the fact that I'm not taking them out of the box. These are kind of up on the shelves, nice to look at, not taking these ones out of the boxes. And I tend to make a distinction between things that I remember on the shelves in the 80s and things that are just new, that didn't exist at the time. There may have been versions of Dungeons and Dragons, but not in this sort of realistic depiction. So I kind of just like them there as representations of the cartoon, but not necessarily something that would have been in the toy shop. Got all 6 of the main guys. Diana, Eric. The good thing about these is that they slot in nicely together, and you can kind of keep the display a little bit compact. Space is always an issue. I don't know if they'll bring out any more. I did some silly videos of Dungeons and Dragons watching some of the old cartoon on the channel, and there are lots of characters they could do. As with these kind of lesser, they're not huge, they're niche lines, right? So I don't know if they'll continue this for very long. It's a little bit like the real Ghostbusters, which is not a niche property at all, but Hasbro tends to do these things where they need something to tie it into. So if there was a Dungeons and Dragons film coming out, hence Dungeons and Dragons, trying to tickle people's nostalgia bones with this line, and then it kind of ends. Same thing happened with the real Ghostbusters that they did recently. Speaking of which, we got the Ecto 1 reissue of that. I'm not taking that out of the box, that's staying pristine. The same with the Turtles Party Wagon. Never had that as a kid, so when they reissued that, I thought I'm going to get these vehicles. I haven't gone crazy with vehicles. Again, space is the issue with that, and beyond Star Wars, I don't think I had a lot of the vehicles. I certainly would have liked them as a kid, but I think even as a kid my focus was the figures more than anything. So this is my kind of a little bit of a miscellaneous corner, and as you can see we move over to, that's the Masters of the Universe in total so far. A little bit hard to get hold of now in the UK. They were being in main retail in Smith's Toys in the UK, not anymore. And specialist shops are your go-to for these in the UK. However, they are getting pretty threadbare there as well. You can pick up some of the older figures, but some of the newer ones are not coming through. Like there, at time of recording, there is, wow, I can't remember the names of some of them, but some of the deluxe ones that I've wanted for a while. The elephant guy, what's the elephant guy? It's Snout Spout. He just appeared on a couple of the sites that I follow and then was gone, sold out straight away. But I've got a good selection. I'm not a completist. I don't need them all. I'll just show you through what I've got so far. The Princess of Power, try to put her together with her antagonists, the Evil Horde. The kind of naming and where things fit in the continuity changed over time, I think, and it was kind of, so is that She-Ra or is that He-Man? I don't know. But the Princess of Power, we needed her, and behind the Princess of Power, Many Faces. The only problem with Many Faces, can you see that on he's the plastic for the chest and the arms? In certain light, it really is obvious that they are different. The painted plastic is different to the actual plastic, so there's kind of a mismatch in the limbs. I'll just take you through because, like in a shop, you have to dig around for what's behind there. Could there be anything good behind there? The Sorceress. I love this figure. Never had it as a kid, so we grab hold of that one for sure. And the Eternian Goddess. I haven't got a lot of these expanded universe, Masters of the Universe, that weren't in the cartoon. You know, I wasn't an avid follower of everything in it, so I just get the things that I remember. And I remember the Eternian Goddess. I remember the weird thing about who is the Sorceress. And in the comics, I think I remembered the Eternian Goddess, a green version of Teela. And it was like, oh, that's intriguing. That intrigues me. Fisto, the one that is right for comedy, of course. And he's really good at it. He uses his fist. He's the fisting master. And Roboto. And what I tend to do is put the guys that I prioritize towards the front and then sort of mess them around over time. Mantenna, I thought he might be a deluxe figure, but apparently not. He fits in the main packaging. And behind, a representation for the Horde Trooper. Oh my goodness, it's thundering outside. Can you hear that? No, it's not thunder, it's someone moving the bins. Yeah, I just got the one of them. I'm not troop building with the Masters of the Universe, mainly because I'm not taking them out of the package, so we're not doing displays with them. The Evil Hordak. I actually liked his design. I was kind of getting out of Masters of the Universe, getting older when She-Ra came along and some of the later figures, but I remember Hordak seeming like a more scary version of Skeletor, so I kind of like his design a little bit more than Skeletor as an antagonist. And Jitsu behind. Yeah, bit breakfast at Tiffany's, but I'm glad they brought him out, you know. It was a different time, you know. Clawful, really like that guy. Some of the more unique villains. And who's behind here? Ooh. Faker. Not one that I particularly like. I think he is one of the stupidest figures. It's like, how are you going to be fooled by that guy? But I grabbed him. I think he was on a sale, so I thought, well, I'll pump up the selection that I've got so far. Scareglow, he seems to be a fan favourite. He was in the Kevin Smith redo recently. I don't really remember him that much. I think he was a later figure that I never had, but I do like him glowing at night. And Ninjor, just do better. We need more exotic characters. I said that in one of my other videos. He's kind of like, well, he seems like one of the lamest villains. He's just a ninja. Just a ninja. I'll come down to some of the boxed guys. I said I wasn't going crazy with the boxes, but they are bringing out a lot of these characters with pack-ins. I'll show you in a second, but these two I do remember. My friend had one of these and I had the other one, so you've got to get hold of these. I like this version of Skeletor that's packed in with it. He gets some kind of highlights on the chest nice to make it pop out. It's just one of those things that you really remember the bird. It seemed really unique as a kid. So I thought I have to get representations of these. And Teela, she's one of my favourite characters. I really like the fact that there are these strong female characters in He-Man. This one, however, is a little bit disappointed because in all the press photography, Hasbro does this a fair amount. It's just done it with the Snarl in the Transformers Studio Series line, where the teaser images show something slightly different. So this was a really nice shade of gold in all the press photography, and then when you get it, it's this kind of lame, almost translucent yellow, which is not great. We wanted a gold warrior woman, and that's not what you got in the package. But yeah, I like the birds. Screech, which you know, is it different? There was something in it that was like, is it different to the sorceress? Doesn't the sorceress turn into a bird? All that confusion when you were a kid, that you kind of remember the confusion along with the figure. I can't do this and show things off at the same time. The Eternian Palace Guard I thought was a nice nod, as you can see, for Man-at-Arms. He'd never had a mustache in the original toy in the 80s, but they did put it on for Man-at-Arms, a change it for the Origins line. But then as a nod, they brought out the Eternian Guard, so you can troop build, but they also put the head in, the original head Man-at-Arms without his mustache. I thought that was a really nice release. And I did get hold of, for Panther, the realistic fur version, and I had to get that, really, you know, because the 80s toy was never a thing that they needed to trumpet in the 80s, the realistic fur. But for this, it was a special release and a little bit more expensive, but you do get that kind of felt fur. It's a little bit blemished even in the package, never been out of the package, but it looks like that. And nasty things like that. Be warned if you're ordering from Forbidden Planet in the UK. Battle Cat, and just a representation. I've got two He-Mans just to have one of them out of the package. It's too expensive for me. I can't afford to be buying one in the box and one to display, and even if I could, I'm not sure I would. If I had the space and the money, I'm not sure I would do that, to be honest. Let me get a chair and I can show you what's behind all these guys up here. Who else we've got in addition to these? Teela, glad we got hold of her. Who is hiding behind? Buzz Off, one of my favourites. When I was a kid, I don't know if you used to do this when you were a really young kid. You always had to take something with you wherever you were going. And if I was going around, it had to make sense that they could come with me. So any flying characters, if they've got wings, if they're a jet, they can come with me to church or to the shops with my mum. So silly. Realism. There he is. It's too obvious to have He-Man at the front, though, right? But we've got him there. He's in his package. I actually went to Smith's Toys to get a version of him before they stopped stocking him, so I can have him up on the shelf. Stinkor, really remember that guy. I think he does smell in the packet, but it doesn't really trumpet. I don't think it trumpets that effect on the thing at all. I mean, the kid's making a face there, but she could have just farted. That might be incidental. We got Zodak behind there, and we've started doubling up at this stage. That's why I got these long poles, so we can have more than a couple of figures on there. Zodak, he's an enigmatic guy. Is he good? Is he bad? He's a bit of both. And Beastman, one of the classics, right at the back. Like I say, I rotate these occasionally just to keep things interesting for myself. I mean, the reason I collect really is not to interact with the figures too much. I like looking at them. Evil Lyn, great variation of Teela. Good example of when they do a good job of reusing molds and reusing ideas, you know, and make them. I mean, the whole Masters of the Universe line is like that, actually. Triclops, I remember, he was one of my favorites from a kid. And again, some of the default classics at the back. Merman, who looks nothing like he does in the actual cartoon, the toy. There was a mismatch between the cartoon and the comics and the toys. Everything looked slightly different. It wasn't synergized in the way it is today. Web store, a very complex figure that you were bound to get his grappling hook and stuff tangled as a kid. He was destined to fail as soon as you took him out of the box and started playing with him, so we're not gonna this time. Whiplash, another later figure that I have fond memories of. And there's good old Skeletor right at the back. I should really bring him forward. He's a great character. The bad guys can only try and fail so often before you start you stop taking them seriously, you know. Cobra Khan. These are really late figures that I do remember. I don't think I had very many of them towards the end of my interest, but Trapjaw is another classic that I think of him as like default Masters of the Universe, so I had to get hold of Trapjaw. I didn't actually look at Mosquito, did I? It's a very cool effect, a complex effect that like it looks like he's sucking blood up with the red pool in his chest fills with red fluid. I don't know if it is actually fluid or if it's just an effect. Stratos, they did a version of him with actual flesh-toned skin, which I don't like as much. And Orko, really great to have Orko, the silly sidekick character. And so I only have 3 of the deluxe figures so far, not for want of having them, but some of the things like they brought out the later versions of the Flying Fists He-Man and stuff in deluxe, and same with Skeletor. He's got his Terror Claws. But I'm one of those people that's like, no, I've got a representation of Skeletor. I don't need every single one. Ram Man was one of my favourites, highlights. He's so different to everything else in the original Masters of the Universe line. And we've got Clamp Champ right at the back there representing. I haven't got any of the Sunman stuff yet. It just doesn't have the associations with my childhood that the other stuff does, and I tend to focus quite closely on things that I remember and that have particular meaning for me. But I do like the fact that Sunman is there for representation, and so we don't think all the heroes are blonde-haired, blue-eyed Aryans. Yeah, so that's the Masters of the Universe. So coming around to this wall now. Oh, the dog is barking. I think I will stay propped up actually. Yeah, the real Ghostbusters. I'll get a long shot of them all. So really, they brought out the 4 Ghostbusters, Marshmallow Man, Slimer, and 2 of the Ghosts, and then stopped after, I think it was Afterlife. I don't know why. It seems to me that like Hasbro is always on a delay. I don't think they've figured out yet that there is an audience out there like myself, doesn't care about the new movie, will buy these whether there's a new movie coming out or not. There's no reason to stop. I think the same thing is going to happen with the new Indiana Jones 6-inch line. As soon as the new movie, the hype for that is gone, that line will end. And it's the same with these. It's unfortunate. I wanted Bad to the Bone, if you remember that version of the character, but I love it. They're really faithful recreations, and I have hugely fond memories of getting hold of these guys when I was a kid. So excited to get the real Ghostbusters. They were so popular. I can't remember the timeline of when they came out, how long the cartoon was after the film, but when it hit, man, you had to get hold of these or you were losing out. The only one that I could get from Argos in the 80s was Winston Zedmore. So he was my representation in when we used to play Ghostbusters in the playground, and I also had him as a figure. Venkman was gone. I mean, the 3 other guys who the originals who set up the Ghostbusters, and Winston's always a kind of a 4th wheel in the story, but I kind of like now looking back thinking, yeah, Winston was mine. Winston was my guy. Oh, and then lo and behold, Playmates. I think in the US, Playmates have been doing this for quite a long time, reissuing the Turtles in one way or another. They do these multi-packs in nice packaging representing vehicles, and they bring out the Turtles, but we have not been able to get them very easy in the UK. So with this retro resurgence, they have officially started bringing these out, and they're a little easier to get. Not super easy. They're not going to be in main retail. You're going to have to go to the specialists, and you have to move fast. I had to pre-order some of these. I wouldn't recommend that. I would wait. I don't do pre-orders very much anymore. But I wanted to make sure I got hold of these, and they're really faithful recreations. I have done a couple of videos about these guys, so I'll put links in the description and on screen where relevant. But yeah, the colours are a little bit off. Like Donnie is, I think, a little bit darker than he was originally. He was always brown, but darker brown, and I think Raph was a lighter green, but they're really cool. And they've even started expanding this still further. This is not all of the new stuff that they've brought out, but very fond memories of collecting these guys. Ugh. Let's go up. And just the range and silliness of the Turtles figures was what I always loved growing up. Beyond Bebop and Rocksteady, when we get to people like Leatherhead, Usagi Yojimbo, who I'm sure they'll bring out, that they've reproduced Splinter in his original form, toy form, and always looks stupid. He still looks stupid. And I made a concession for this one and did get 2 foot soldiers, but as I say, I want my shelves to be a little bit like, oh, what have you got here? So they're not all together, you know. So once these are filled out with the new ones, we'll have to dig for all the different figures. I'm stupid, I know. All right, on to the Transformers. As you can see, you've got space for things that might be incoming in the future. Always like to think ahead. I saw some footage of someone else's collection the other day where they were doing similar. You know, they had the shelves. Like my wife will sometimes ask, why is there nothing here? And I'm like, well, if I put stuff there, then I start to feel like I'm running out of space. I need to know that there's somewhere things can go. Anyway, so as you can see, my focus with the Transformers, these new ones that are highly articulated but very accurate to the cartoon, is I want these out of the package. I want to see the articulation, and very G1 focused, as you can see. We're pretty up to date. Beachcomb has just come out at time of recording, and we've also got the latest Dinobot Leader Class for the Studio Series, Snarl, Skids and Cliffjumper. Cliffjumper was a little bit rare to get hold of. And as you can see, I've branched out. I was very focused on the Studio Series. The Dinobots are Studio Series. Some of the others that I'll show you in a moment. But these are, and I think Cliffjumper is Studio Series. Technically, he might be Buzzworthy Bumblebee. But I've started collecting these guys, who the Skids is in the Legacy line, which is another kind of, well, I think it's the main line now. But some of these are just as accurate or as good representations as those Studio Series lines. So, and their scale is good. The scale fits in. The mini bots tend to be slightly shorter than the main guys and stuff. So the lines I've branched out and from the Studio Series now, and I'm loving it. Obviously, my focus is to get a representation of each of the from the first 2 series of Transformers and the movie. So we need Skids, we need Inferno. This Grapple is out there. I missed the boat on some of them, so, and like I say, I'm not a completist, but eventually I will get hold of them all. Grimlock looks cool. I think the visor on these guys and the eyes should pop more. It's a little bit better on Snarl, but yeah, it's picking up the light okay there, but in the darkness his head just looks completely black. Some stuff that pops a little bit better. Ironhide and Jazz having a bro moment there, and Blue Streak, who is in from the Earthrise line. But as you can see, the scale is he's a little bit bent down, but he's pretty much the same as Jazz, which they should be, and Ironhide should be a bit taller, the Dinobots are massive, and so on. So it all kind of ties together. I like the fact that Hasbro's doing that. Hope they keep it up. And on that note, I also started branching out with, so Galvatron was in the Legacy line, never released in the Studio series, even though he should have been. That would have made sense, but if you're looking for things to make sense, don't collect Hasbro stuff. Same thing with these guys, weren't in the Studio series, Cyclonus, and this was a variation with G1 colours for the toy, but the Scourge, that did come in the Studio series. It's all over the place. Modern Transformers collecting really demands that you look things up on the wiki, figure out where things are, what are they doing, and where are the good representations. So for instance, this guy came out, I think it was Earthrise, this mold of Galvatron, but it was very dirtied up to fit in with that Netflix series. And then they brought out this version, which is cleaner and a lot more G1 accurate to the movie. Apparently based on fan feedback. I don't know why they needed feedback. It's obvious that's what we'd want from my point of view. And they were doing things like, you know, they have to make the most of these molds, so they do color variations. So this is in the Studio series line, this is Scourge. And it's not showing up very well there, but he's kind of a purple color, probably more accurate to the movie. And then they brought out these guys that they called the Sweeps. Now in the movie, there's no actual visual difference between Scourge and his henchmen, the Sweeps, but in the toys, they made that distinction. I kind of like it, to be honest. I do like the fact that this is more cartoon accurate colour, this is more toy accurate colour, but together you have Cyclonus and his Armada, which was always just one guy. Weird. Changes in the script and stuff, I think there were meant to be more Cyclonuses at some point. But yeah, that villain, and the good thing is, if like me you're not too worried about the pre-orders and you can be a little bit patient, you can get some good deals. So this guy should be 50 quid. I'd waited long enough that, and there was enough supply of him for me to get him for half price. So, you know, playing the long game. And this was where I started really with the movie. These are all Studio series. I love the Studio series still. That version of RC is fantastic. And I've really got on board with modern Transformers collecting since starting. I think Perceptor was my first, may have been my first, I can't remember now. I'd have to look at the YouTube channel to see what I got first. But those guys having a discussion with Spike, telling them what they should be doing. They really need to bring a version of Daniel out. I know that can easily represent Daniel, but we need a Daniel. And again, trying to make up space here. So those Junkions that they are riding on the bike, someone, a kind viewer of the channel, gave me the idea. The Junkions are slightly out of scale in robot mode to ride each other, but they're perfect for Cup and Hot Rod and some of the smaller deluxe guys. The Junkions are Voyager class. So yeah, they're just really good, biked up and ready to go. And of course Wheelie getting a ride. I was going to troop build with this guy, but it just seems so frivolous and they make it so difficult. It's like, I'm not paying 26 quid for 5 of those. If they brought out a multi-pack and slashed the price, I would go into it. And this is actually another Studio series, Starscream, but I haven't got him with the Coronation gear plastics that he came with. You get his cape and crown and stuff. But these are Legacy. The Insecticons are coming out in the Legacy line. So if you want a kind of a representation, you've got to pick and choose from these various different lines. Look at the mold, think, is that a good representation? And then go from there. That's what I've started doing, and really that is pretty much where we are up to with the collecting. However, I did forget about this. I have this nice little corner here. They started doing the reissues of Transformers. This was where I started. I actually started with these reissues that have the packaging that I remember from the 80s. And then the collecting kind of exploded from there. They have done loads of reissues of these things, but these were really accurate packaging, and save you having... I don't want to buy reproductions. China is doing these all the time. You can get everything if you're willing to get those knockoffs from China, but I don't want to do that. I want it to be official Hasbro stuff. So they brought out Astro Train. It was a couple of years ago now, 2018-19. A version of Prime without his trailer, which was... I wouldn't have got that probably if they continued this line, because I would have wanted the correct sort of big packaged Optimus, but because they stopped this line, I was looking for stuff to get. And really I just wanted some of these things that I remember from being on the shelf. Soundwave was my first Transformer, so that's a nice reissue, and taught me to be very careful on Amazon about assuming Amazon is going to be legit. It's not the first version of Soundwave I got. I thought that was I was getting the reissue, and it wasn't. It was a knockoff, so be careful. And that's the reissue of Starscream, and also Blaster at the back there. Had to send to America to get hold of these before they stopped being around, and then they filtered through to UK shops, so you don't need to panic. Sometimes stuff comes through anyway, and I just think, like, well, if it's there, I'll grab it. This is actually my original vintage G1 Prowl that I found recently while we were helping my mum move to a new house, and really nice to have that. I haven't got any of the weapons for it or anything like that, but he's in pretty good condition for an original from the 80s. I got the cassettes to go with Soundwave and Rumble and Ravage. Missed out on some of the mini-bot reissues, but my brother does have some of them. I'm hoping at some point he'll realise he needs to give them to me. And they started doing these Star Trek, I guess they're not reissues, they're completely new molds, but they have released them in some of the packaging from the 90s. Same sort of deal as Motu Origins and stuff, but the thing is, I don't have any nostalgic memories to do with that packaging. I never collected these figures. They were more readily available, I think, in America. So I've just been getting a hold of these guys as they come through to the specialists in the UK, and they have this universe overall packaging. If you want the kind of retro styled packaging, I think they're imports basically, but there is Data so far, Picard, and at the back it is Riker. And then for the originals, all from Wrath of Khan so far, Spock, and can you guess who that's going to be? Khan! You've got Khan and the guy who shouts Khan. Can't remember his name. So yeah, finally, these are miscellaneous figures that never had a toy line when I was growing up, but they're very British, British-centric cartoons, TV shows. So the Trapdoor was a claymation thing in the 80s. Very funny, actually, and still holds up particularly well today. Very intelligently written and beautifully animated. Starred Burke, who lived in a kind of a haunted mansion with his crazy master. And was always trying to maintain and control what was coming through the scary trapdoor. And these are all basically characters that appeared in that show. These are produced in the UK by a small studio called Nema Studios, and I really like what they're doing. They also do some customs and stuff. They have stuff like THX, George Lucas's movie, figures from that. They have Ewoks Battle for Endor customs and stuff, but it's really this retro, this kind of niche British stuff that I'm going to those guys. Nightmare, it was a TV show in the 80s, an adventure game for kids. You had to steer yourself through a dungeon while blind. Grotbags, a terrifying witch from 80s children's television. And the last two that I got from this particular company were their Space Raiders. These are crisps, pickled onion flavour, I think that is, by the colouring on the card. And basically, the sort of, and these guys as well, those were sweets, Chewits, from a particular cartoon that again, it was animation. But they really did a good job with those cartoons in the 80s, because as a kid you'll watch anything that is adverts. I think I said cartoons, I meant adverts. So it was a claymation dinosaur stepping on a bus station. Who's not going to buy the crisps after you've seen that? So that is my collection so far. Like I say, I would love to expand. I've been having this idea that I was really into Games Workshop at one time, and still am kind of, but I don't play the games, don't have time to play the games. It's a massive faff, but I still like painting and making the scenery. And what I would really like to do is create some displays for these guys, but I need more space. So who knows, maybe in the future we will be able to do that, and it would be better for making videos as well. But we're always limited in terms of what the scope is, but it's great. This is where I sit in my little seat at night. You can have a look up at the collection, and it's really nice. It kind of visually, it's, people buy art for their homes and beautiful things to look at, ornaments, whatever. This is the version of that for me. The association keeps me youthful, keeps me imaginative and fun loving. I mean, it's just so many of these things are so silly but so imaginative, and it taps into some sort of sense of letting your mind wander and explore crazy ideas and crazy characters. And I've always loved it, and I've always loved collecting it, and this is my adult version of that collecting. I think you have to get to a certain age where you stop worrying about what people think about it. Like, you're a big kid. Yeah, I am a big kid, fine. You know, I don't shirk my responsibilities. I'm married, I have a job, I do stuff. I can do what I want with my money, and if I want to be a bit frivolous and silly, that's my choice. Screw you if you don't like it. Anyway, thank you for watching, guys. Watch some of the other shows on the videos on the channel. I've been Napyet, and I'll see you next time. Look at that guy, terrifying.